It doesn't show us, hey, this wise man who put the words of Jesus into practice, life was hard, life happened, and his house barely survived. No, it says, no, it was still standing. And then it gives us the reason why. Because he was aware of the words of Jesus and he put them into practice. This story is about two builders. Let's take a look at builder number one at the close of the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 7, verses 24 and 25. We'll start there. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. Rock good, sand bad. So when we think about this passage, there's a few key words I just kind of want to bring to life. The first one is that the first builder is described as a wise man. Now, when you hear the word wise or wisdom, just start to process, what are the things that you think of? If you had to define wise or wisdom, how would you define it? Now, I would go so far as to say that while Merriam-Webster's dictionary has the definition, I would imagine that many of you have your own definition of what wisdom is. Or maybe you would have a similar definition in terms of how you characterize it, but in terms of what you would say qualifies as wisdom, we might have varying opinions here. You might see one thing that someone says is, man, that's really wise. And some of you might say, I don't think that's the truth at all. I think that's a lie. I don't know how a lie could be wisdom. When you think of wisdom, where does it come from? Does it come from age? Is it that once you've gotten to a certain age, now all of a sudden, because of so many experiences that's taken place in your life, that now you have the ability, the opportunity to share, and that is wisdom? I don't know. When I'm thinking through wisdom, I've got some people in my head that are far advanced in terms of years from me that I would not say anybody in this world would qualify them as wise. They're like, I know, you can't say those things out loud. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to stop. That's not wise at all. I don't know if age always has something connected to wisdom. I think it certainly adds to it. What if I told you that there's a biblical version of wisdom? And honestly, maybe you could make the case that it's every version of wisdom, whether we want to accept it or not. What if we were to go so far as to say wisdom is the knowledge and thoughts of God? Maybe you've heard that phrase from God's perspective saying, my thoughts are higher than your thoughts, declares the Lord. My ways are higher than your ways. Like the idea that he knows a little bit more than we do, not just about who we are because he made us, but also the way the world works because he made it. And that he has some insight that we might not have because he doesn't sit in the muck and all the turmoil and chaos of our world. He sits above it, and he sees how all of these pieces, all of us interact in a community together. That he might have some insight that we don't, and that would be wisdom. Either way, we have this guy characterized as a wise man. And this wise man, he does something with the words of Jesus. He hears them, but then beyond that, it says he put them into practice. I love that it says he put them into practice. It doesn't say that he put them into perfection. In other words, Jesus isn't saying just because I tell you what to do, there's no need for the cross anymore. In other words, he's not saying if you were to hear my expectations, it is within your ability to meet every single one of those expectations, therefore no cross needed. And he says, look, you're going to practice what I have encouraged you to do, what I share with you. You're going to put those into practice. You can't put those into perfection because the cross is still a legitimate need in our life. This wise man hears the words of Jesus and says, I'm going to put them to use. I'm going to put them to work. It also tells us that this wise man who put the words of Jesus into practice, it says that the rain came, streams rose, and beat against his house. In other words, for this wise man who put the words of Jesus into practice, life was hard. Like, life wasn't all that easy. I don't know what your version of the rains came and the waters rose and the wind beat against your house. I don't know what that is for you. Obviously, that's a metaphor. It's a word picture, but it means something real in your life. Like immediately as I say that, you probably can think of a very specific circumstance that says, that feels a lot like somebody's beating against my house. As I say those things, you're like, I remember, go back to this year, man, that was a really tough year. It felt like the water was rising around us constantly. Last thing that I think we should take a look at with builder number one is that he was a wise man. He put the words of Jesus into practice. Life was hard, but the result was his house didn't fall. In fact, this picture that he kind of presents with us is a picture of perseverance. That life happened, but he got through it. He persevered through it. It's a picture of resilience. It's a picture of endurance. It doesn't show us or paint a picture at all that the house was hanging on by a thread. It doesn't show us or make us feel like, hey, this wise man who put the words of Jesus into practice, life was hard, life happened, and his house barely survived. No, it says, no, it was still standing. Not just barely survived, but it was still standing. And then it gives us the reason why. Because he was aware of the words of Jesus, and he put them into practice. And the result was he survived, but not just got by, he persevered. He built resilience. He tested his endurance, and it passed. That's builder number one. Rock good. Builder number two. Matthew 7:26 and 27. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. Now we have some contrasting pictures here. In the first one we had, in builder number one, we had a wise man. And we said, hey, we think wisdom is going to be the thoughts and the ways of God. And we see that because he decided to take the ways and thoughts of Jesus and put them to practice. And this one, same version, same words of Jesus, but this guy decides, I don't want to put them into practice. And he is labeled as foolish. In other words, I don't know if foolish so much as all the time the things we decide to do, but sometimes it's the things we decide not to do. This guy is declared foolish before he does anything, other than he's decided, I don't want to put the words of Jesus into practice. I don't want to trust what he said. I don't want to value what he said over what I feel or think in this particular circumstance in my life. This opposite of wisdom, this foolish man. When you think of foolish people, who do you think of? Probably the guy that's like, hey, y'all watch this, you know? It doesn't end well. You kind of see it. It's about to happen, right? You're like, this is not good. But if he pulls it off, I mean, that's pretty special. I mean, we need friends like that in our life, you know what I'm saying? But that also requires that we're probably have to go to do some hospital visits a little bit for some broken hour. Like the whole 911, yeah, he is on the ground, you know what I'm saying? But if he had pulled it off, I mean, that would have been a story that you tell for generations, you know what I'm saying? I mean, we'd be old on the porch in the nursing home talking to each other about, hey, remember that one time so-and-so did that one thing over the handlebars backwards and behind himself? That was incredible, you know what I'm saying? We need some foolishness in our life, but probably not this kind of foolishness. Not this opposite of wisdom foolishness. He says he doesn't put them into practice. The truth is, though, everybody puts something into practice. Like everybody's doing something to build their house, to build their life. This foolish guy, he experienced the same thing that the wise guy experienced. Rain came, streams rose, beat against the house. Life's gonna life. The difference was the result. Well, the first guy that we read, it says it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. But for this one, he built his house on the sand. And it says, And the wind blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. Why? Well, he heard the words of Jesus, and he didn't put them into practice. Now, here's the thing. Both of the builders, builder one and builder two, they both hear the same words of Jesus. They both experience the same teaching. Jesus is giving this, remember, after that huge crowd listens to him to talk about all these different things that happen in life. And he looks at all of them. So all of them have heard the same message. And he just says, hey, you're going to fall into one of two categories moving forward. It's your choice. Builder one or builder two. Let me tell you about builder one. This is what's going to happen. Let me tell you about builder two. This is what's going to happen. Now you get to choose. They both had the exact same words. In other words, the difference between the two guys, it's not knowledge. They both knew the same thing. The difference was obedience. That's a huge difference.